Hey guys, my name is Kelsey Cornelio, and I will be doing my midterm project on at-risk students. At-risk students and differentiated instruction really hits home for me. I had a lot of trouble with reading growing up in school, and I totally tend to gravitate more towards students who are struggling and have a little to confidence in themselves. So I really just wanted to dive deeper into this topic and explain to you guys and shed a little more light on how to help those students who are at risk, because it may seem at sometimes that you've hit the end of your road and it's just like super hard to see a student discouraged. So now I'm going to give you guys some tools and hopefully some stuff that can help you to see and help those students that you have who are can be identified as at risk. So our first question here would be, you might be thinking, is what exactly is an at-risk student? According to Watson and Bolger, a student who is at risk is a student who is poorly equipped to perform up to academic standards, which means too that they are definitely struggling and are on the brink of maybe failing a subject or like failing one particular part of your class if you're doing high school. Um, and something I found interesting while reading their article too was that students who are at risk may also shift. So you may have a student in the beginning of the year or even halfway through who's like super struggling with decoding or maybe super struggling with a math concept. And then they become super eager and they completely have a shift and they become proficient or even much better and they make a ton of progress. So it is important to know that students who are at risk don't necessarily have to stay at risk their whole life. And that's why we as teachers, which I will get into more later, need to be super confident in our students and give them positive reinforcement. Another thing that I found interesting is that um, a lot of teachers do think that, or not think, but more necessarily have a fixed mindset about at-risk students, and even other people like their classmates. Maybe someone who's perceived as slow or at risk, that totally does not mean that they are incapable of learning. Students and young children are sponges, so they totally will absorb anything that you say, and you give them a bit of confidence and the fact that you believe in them, and they'll totally run with it. So I will definitely touch more on that later. So now I'm going to touch on factors or identifiers that you can look for to see if a student is at risk. So a student may be at risk if they are part of a low socioeconomic class, they have a single parent family, because a lot of the times that doesn't really help the student at home, and it totally does impact students. I've seen it myself while I was student taught in my internships. It's a lot going on for them at home, especially the younger kids. If their older sibling dropped out of school, because obviously a lot of us look up to our older siblings. Well, I am an older sibling, so I know my younger brother looked up to me. So if they're seeing that their sibling dropped out of school, that could totally influence them as well. Students may be at risk if they repeated a grade, because there's the confidence right there. Your confidence totally goes down, especially if you stay back in the upper grades. And as you get older, you understand that what staying back means. So repeating a grade could be another indicator. Language and cultural barriers, especially for those students who are English language learners. If you can't communicate with your classmates or your teacher, you're having trouble understanding English, it's totally going to screw with your confidence, and it's going to make them struggle, not help them in school, and they're going to struggle. And they could be failing a subject, they could be failing language arts or stuff like that. Also, students who are emotionally disturbed, obviously, they have a ton of stuff going on personally. So you need to look out for those kinds of students and help them when they are needed. And another huge one that I didn't even think about was if they have weak self-concept. But that means that they don't complete their assignments, they are very hostile when talking to their classmates and their teachers, and they don't participate in class activities. So they're really just not into the whole school thing at all. If a student has unrealistic goals, like if a student who legitimately cannot decode a CVC word in a grade 1 book, and they're starting in 3rd grade and they're starting to read Harry Potter, like that's totally unrealistic, and you need to look out for that. And a big one, especially today, learned helplessness. Learned helplessness, I have seen this in my internship way too much. A lot of the times that it stems from things at home and the lack of autonomy. But it's all things, the factors that can come together. Students just don't have to have one, they could have multiple going on. So those are definitely things you need to look for in order to identify students who may be at risk in your classes. Now the next step was, how do we help a struggling learner meet their goals? So you have to have a mindset as a teacher that all of your students can succeed. We can't be labeling students left and right. We need to see every child as themselves and definitely teach to the whole child, because every child in your classroom is going to learn differently, and I will definitely be touching upon that later. When teachers believe in their students, they're fostering a positive learning environment, which is so important. Even the decor in your classroom is important for boosting student morale and confidence. And the big thing that I read about in this article was that if a student trusts their teacher, they will have more confidence in themselves and push themselves academically. And a lot of the time, students who are at risk want to do the bare minimum. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of students want to do the bare minimum, but we need to encourage students to push themselves and challenge themselves, and we need to challenge them. Realistically challenge them, of course. The next one that I thought that was super important, it's from our textbook, is the growth mindset. Growth mindset is something that is super prevalent in today's school systems, especially in the district that I'm have my internship in. All of the grades 3, 4, and 5 especially focus on growth mindset. And okay, so what is it? Growth mindset is believing that our most basic abilities are just a starting point. So as we read in our book, it's not fixed. So a lot of the times we have a fixed mindset about things that, you know, I've never been good at math. I really haven't. And there was a point in my high school career where I said to myself, I'm never going to get better. But then my Algebra 2 teacher, my junior year, she made all of the difference. She helped me. She told me I could do it. She believed in me. And I got an A in that class all year. So having that fixed mindset for so long that I was never going to be good at math was something that was put a damper on my grades and my confidence in math. And now then I switched to that growth mindset, and it helps so much. So think about how much it could help your students. And we can all see that in our internships and when we teach, that the growth mindset is so important, especially for the older kids, because that's when they really start to have confidence issues and struggle. Another thing we need to do is look for strengths. It is very important to identify and be familiar with our students' strengths. So taking time in the beginning of the year to get to know your students, ask them what they like. Ask them things that they need to improve on. Really look at their past records, their report cards. All of that is going to help you understand where your student needs help and where they have their strengths. So we need to give students praise for their strengths, whether it be in front of their peers or in private conversations. That's so important. And creating engaging activities that pertain to students' strengths and their interests. But you also need to be giving them a bit of a challenge, because if you give at-risk students the bare minimum, that's all they're ever going to expect, and that's all they ever think they're going to do. So being able to push them realistically is very important. Another huge one is that our textbook mentions is that success breeds success. And we've heard this saying a bunch in our lives. I mean, I have throughout my schooling. But we need to spend time on activities that are powerful and relevant, but also show them that they can succeed in challenges that come their way. So teaching students how to problem solve and how to get through harder assignments that they never thought they could. It's super important as teachers to show students that they can and give them the tools to how they can. Another big one that our textbook mentions is the KUD, the know, understand, and do. So be very clear with your instructions and what you want from your students when you give them assignments or homework or projects or what you expect. Make sure to outline what they need to know. And at-risk students will benefit from this because you won't be keeping them guessing. You won't. They'll be. This is what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. And you will help them through whatever it is that they need to do. And just remember, we have to remember that some students do think very literally. So outlining, this is what I want. There's no guessing in between, but also enforcing that creativity is important. Making real world connections is also very important. It's showing them that we can apply what we are learning in school to the real world. And how many times have we said I've said it in high school, and you hear your kids say it, your students say it, is that when the heck am I ever going to use this again? But we need to be able to personalize the content and the curriculum that we are teaching to see its relevance. Even sometimes I as a teacher, or we as teachers, may be like, how are they going to use this? And we need to find ways to help them apply it. Another big one is teaching up. So we need to scaffold instruction for at-risk students. So we can start with the advanced students and give them their stuff, and then but we can scaffold what it is that the at-risk students need to be learning so they can feel that they are on the same wavelength as everyone else in the class. And it shows students that they can work through challenges with our help along the way, and it helps them to trust us as their teacher. And you have to be really careful not to just do the work for the students and give them the answers, but facilitate discussion. Ask questions, model thinking. Modeling thinking is so huge for students because they, even like especially when reading, they might be thinking, I don't really understand what the author is saying. I don't understand the purpose. I don't understand this character. So modeling thinking and problem solving for students is huge. And the last two ways I'm gonna touch on are very important. Providing different ways that students learn. So you have technology, you have textbooks, we have videos, songs, artwork, making it apply to sports, television shows, being in the know of what your students are engaging in outside of school. And understanding that some students are auditory learners, some students are visual, some students thrive off lectures and their external processors. Or some students may do better in group settings and some students may do better alone. We need to be able to provide different ways for students to learn and to interact with each other and rely on each other, but also know that they can do work themselves. And of course, the last thing, tell your students you believe in them and give them positive reinforcement, because it makes a child's face totally light up when you tell them, hey, I totally believe in you. You got this. You're doing fantastic. I'm so proud of you. For those of us who are teaching the little kiddos, saying that you're proud of them as their teacher, they're going to really take that to heart. And they're going to remember that and keep working to make you proud and make themselves proud. First and foremost, is they should be proud of themselves. So that's super important to always keep at the basis at all ages, telling your students, even in high school, hearing that it's high school, middle school, hearing that you did a great job is always super affirming.